The cold was the first thing that registered. Not the kind that numbed the skin, but the deep, aching cold that settled into bones, as if every cell had forgotten the warmth of life. His breath hitched, a sharp gasp cutting through the thick silence. Then, sound flooded in, the mechanical hum of systems coming online, the hiss of depressurization, and a distant, rhythmic beeping. His fingers twitched, muscles sluggish as he tried to move. Darkness peeled away, replaced by dim, flickering lights casting eerie shadows across smooth meta walls. He sucked in a breath, the air thin and artificial, carrying a strange sterility that didn't match the world he remembered. A voice, synthetic yet soothing, crackled to life from unseen speakers. Disengaged. Subject awakening complete. Vital signs stable. Neural lag detected, administering cognitive recalibration. A sharp hiss, followed by a prickling sensation at the base of his neck, sent a rush of warmth through his body, jolting his sluggish mind into focus. His eyes adjusted, taking in the small chamber, the frost still clinging to the edges of the stasis pod. He pushed himself upright, legs trembling as he stepped forward, feet unsteady against the cold meta floor. Memories clashed, earthy scents of forests, laughter echoing in hallways, the roar of engines as ships lifted into the sky. He had been part of something, a mission, a expedition. But how long had it been? The pod's console flickered, data scrolling too fast for his groggy mind to process. He forced himself to focus. When line stood out, stark against the cascading information. Duration, 408 years, 7 months, 22 days. The number sent a spike of ice through his chest. It had to be a mistake. A malfunction. His crew, where were they? His pulse pounded as he staggered toward the terminal, fingers fumbling against the controls. Status report, he rasped, his voice hoarse from centuries of disuse. The AI responded with a precision that lacked any trace of concern. All other chambers offline. No surviving crew detected. Silence pressed against him, heavier than the years lost. He braced himself against the console, breath coming too fast, too shallow. He was alone. Everyone he knew, everything he had left behind, it was gone. The world outside the pod was not the one he had closed his eyes in. His mind screamed at the impossibility of it, but the cold logic of the AI left no room for denial. He had overslept by 4 centuries. He squeezed his eyes shut, drawing in a slow, measured breath. He couldn't afford to break down, not now. Not when he had no idea what waited beyond this room. He pushed himself away from the console, scanning the chamber. The exit was sealed, but a retinal scan panel blinked at the door. He stepped forward, leaning in as the scanner swept over his gaze. A mechanical click followed, and the door slid open with a soft hiss. Beyond, the corridor stretched out in sterile white and steel, illuminated by dim, bluish overhead lights. He moved cautiously, boots echoing against the floor as he stepped into the unknown. The air smelled different, sharper, tinged with something foreign. Not quite human. He wasn't on his original ship anymore. That much was clear. He turned a corner and froze. A window lined the wall, revealing the vastness of space. But it wasn't Earth or any familiar. Instead, an enormous space station loomed in the distance, its architecture nothing like the designs he knew. Sleek, towering spires connected by glowing energy conduits, ships of unfamiliar designs darting between docking bays. His stomach twisted. This was not humanity's creation. A presence flickered at the edge of his vision. Movement. He span, instinct kicking in, muscles calling. A figure stood at the far end of the corridor, tall and slender, their silhouette inhuman. Large, luminescent eyes regarded him with something between curiosity and shock. Their skin shimmered faintly under the artificial light, a hue that shifted between deep blue and silver. They wore a flowing garment, embroidered with intricate patterns that glowed subtly. The alien raised a small device, speaking in a language he didn't recognize, yet something in the cadence carried urgency. He stepped back, raising his hands slightly, not in surrender, but in very caution. The alien's gaze flicked to the open door behind him, then back to him. More footsteps sounded down the corridor. Others. They had found him. Panic flared, but he crushed it down. Running wasn't an option. He had no idea where to go, and these beings had technology centuries ahead of his. He clenched his jaw, straightening his posture. If humanity had been missing for 400 years, then he was the first to return. And if these beings knew what had happened, he intended to find out. The alien took a slow step forward, speaking again, this time pressing a button on the device. A moment later, a voice, not synthetic, but clear and oddly formal, translated into his language. Impossible, you are human. He narrowed his eyes, studying the being in front of him. The way they watched him, the way their fingers trembled slightly against the device, they weren't just surprised. They were afraid. He didn't know why, but a part of him, the deep, instinctual part of his humanity, recognized a simple truth. Whatever had happened in the last 4 centuries, whoever these beings were, humanity's name still carried weight. He squared his shoulders, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. Yeah. And I want answers. The silence in the chamber was deafening. Elias sat in a cold, metallic chair at the center of the vast room, surrounded by beings that defied everything he had once known about life beyond Earth. They watched him with a mixture of fascination, apprehension, and something deeper, something he couldn't yet name. Their eyes, or what passed for them, reflected 1,000 unspoken questions. The walls shimmered with faint energy fields, symbols and holograms flickering in an ancient language far older than any human civilization. The air was thick, not with oxygen alone, but with something unseen, an energy that made his skin tingle, as though the very atmosphere was aware of him in a way that unsettled him. At the far end of the chamber, a council of beings sat on elevated platforms, their presence radiating authority. Some had elongated forms, crystalline structures woven into their bodies like living glass. Others were towering figures clad in aorganic armor, their movements slow and deliberate. The one seated at the center was different, tall, robed in flowing garments that pulsed with light, their face obscured by a mask of shifting patterns. When they spoke, the sound was not a voice in the traditional sense but a resonance that vibrated through the very air itself. A translator device embedded in Elias's ear crackled to life, attempting to bridge the gap between languages that had never before been spoken to one another. You should not exist. The words landed like a hammer. Elias clenched his jaw, forcing himself to remain still. He had expected skepticism, hostility even. But this? He exhaled slowly, letting the weight of the moment settle before responding. Well, that's the thing about humans. We tend to show up where we're not expected. A murmur rippled through the gathered assembly, some exchanging unreadable glances while others seemed to stiffen at his words. The central figure leaned forward slightly. Humanity was lost. Erased. We do not understand how you remain. Elias's heart pounded in his chest. Lost? Erased? The implications chilled him, but he kept his expression neutral. Then I guess we have something in common, he said, scanning their faces. Because I don't understand how I ended up here either. The council exchanged hushed communication, their voices overlapping in layered tones that the translator struggled to keep up with. Then, the robed figure raised a hand, and silence fell once more. Your kind was once meant to stand among the stars, they continued. But history tells us that the seat reserved for humanity was never claimed. And the ones who would have guided you vanished. Elias leaned forward. Vanished? Who are you talking about? Another pause. Then, an image materialized in the center of the chamber, a projection of Earth as it had once been, a lush blue world spinning in the void. But as the image zoomed outward, other structures appeared, satellites, space stations, ships that bore no resemblance to human design. A civilization had once been present, orbiting Earth, watching, waiting, and then, suddenly, they were gone. The projection flickered, showing only an empty ward where those watchers had once been. You were abandoned, another voice spoke, this one from a being with luminous, translucent skin. The ones who ensured your survival, gone without explanation. And so we waited, and waited, until at last, it was agreed that no human would ever come. Elias felt the weight of their words settle over him like a crashing tide. Someone, some civilization, had been there, protecting Earth, guiding it from the shadows. But then, they had disappeared, leaving humanity to fend for itself. And now, 4 centuries later, he was the first to awaken. The last remnant of something no one had expected to return. A deep breath. He wasn't here to collapse under the weight of history. Then maybe, he said carefully, it's time we took that seat after all. His words sent another ripple through the chamber. Some of the council members leaned forward, their expressions unreadable. Others stiffened, their bodies rigid with tension. The robed figure spoke again. The seat remains, but its place is contested. The void left behind by humanity has been filled by others. There are those who will not accept your claim. And there are those who will fear it. Elias met their gaze. And what about you? A long pause. Then, the masked figure tilted their head. We are not your enemy. But we cannot protect you from what is to come. The room darkened slightly, and new projections flickered into view, star maps, tactical readouts, the outlines of ships that Elias had never seen before. A war was brewing. And humanity, despite having just returned, was already at the center of it. You must decide, Elias Vance, the voice resonated through the air. Will you accept the legacy left behind? Or will you remain lost? Elias stood slowly, rolling his shoulders as he took in the projections around him. His mind was racing, but his decision had already been made the moment he woke up. You already know my answer, he said, stepping forward. I didn't come all this way just to turn back now. The chamber remained silent, but something shifted. An unspoken understanding passing through the gathered council. The robed figure finally nodded. Then history begins again. The tension inside the command chamber was suffocating. Holographic projections of distant star systems flickered in midair, their glowing lines tracing the routes of human colonies, now lifeless, their signals dark for centuries. Elias Vance stood at the center of it all, arms crossed, his mind racing as he took in the impossible reality before him. Humanity had not just been forgotten, it had been erased. He turned to the council members who had summoned him to this meeting, their expressions unreadable beneath layers of alien features and shifting bioluminescent markings. Some regarded him with curiosity, others with suspicion, and a few with something close to hostility. You're telling me, Elias said, his voice carefully controlled, that the records of humanity's expansion into the stars just stopped? No signs of war, no catastrophic event, no plague, just silence. A massive, armored being with molten cracks running through its skin rumbled. Its voice like grinding stone. That is correct. The human colonies went silent one by one, but not in a way we could predict. There was no pattern, no distress signals. It was as if they ceased to be. Elias exhaled, running a hand through his hair. And yet Earth survived. Somehow, someway, we made it through. But if humanity had already reached the stars, where the hell did they go? A translucent, crystalline entity floated forward, its shifting prismatic surface reflecting the dim blue glow of the projections. That is what concerns us, human. You are the first of your kind to return to the galactic stage in over 400 years. You emerged from an era that should not have allowed it. And now, questions that have long been buried are rising once more. Elias felt the weight of their words pressing against him. He had spent the last few weeks adjusting to the sheer absurdity of his situation, waking up 400 years late, discovering that the galaxy had written humanity off as a mystery left unsolved. But this was something else. This wasn't just about his survival. It was about an entire missing chapter of human history. And now, standing here in the heart of a civilization that had moved on without them, he had no choice but to be the one to ask the questions no one else could. A sharp chime echoed through the chamber, and a new projection materialized. This time, it was not just data, but something tangible. A derelict station, its surface pockmarked with centuries of decay, drifted in the void like a forgotten tomb. Strange markings lined its hull, human in origin, yet altered, distorted by something beyond comprehension. This, said the Christian being, is the only remnant we have found. A station of human design, discovered in the void between systems. It was long abandoned, its logs corrupted, its technology frozen in time. But there is something else. Elias stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. What is it? Another chime, and the projection shifted, zooming in on the station's interior. The structure was a graveyard of twisted metal and broken corridors, the remains of machinery long since rusted. But at the heart of it, within a sealed chamber untouched by time, there was a message. A single phrase, carved deep into the bulkhead, as if it had been left as a final warning. We are not gone. We are waiting. The words sent a chill through the room. Even the more composed members of the council seemed disturbed, their reactions ranging from unreadable to outright concerned. Elias felt a knot form in his stomach. This was left by humans. The being shifted. It is likely. But we do not understand what it means. Who is waiting? And for what? Elias clenched his fists. His instincts told him that whoever left that message had done so knowing it would take centuries to be discovered. But why? And if they were still waiting, who, or what, had kept them away for so long? He turned to the gathered council, his voice firm. I need to go there. I need to see it for myself. A murmur of debate spread through the chamber. The Christian diplomat flickered with uncertainty. That would be unwise. If this mystery has remained undisturbed for centuries, then perhaps it is better left alone. Elias shook his head. You don't get it. Humanity didn't just disappear. They left a message. Someone out there wants us to find them. He took a step forward, meeting the gaze of each council member in turn. And if we don't go now, we might never get another chance. Silence. Then, the robed figure at the head of the council chamber finally spoke. You seek answers, Ambassador Vance. But you must understand, answers have consequences. If you go down this path, you may awaken something best left undisturbed. Elias's jaw tightened. Then I guess it's a good thing I already woke up late. The chamber remained still for a moment longer. Then, slowly, the central figure nodded. Very well. A ship will be prepared. But heed this warning. What you find may not be the truth you desire. Elias exhaled, a mix of relief and determination filling his chest. He had come too far to turn back now. Whatever was waiting in the void, whatever secret had been buried with the lost chapters of human history, he was going to find it. Even if it meant facing the impossible. The void stretched endlessly before them, a canvas of absolute darkness broken only by the distant glow of dying stars. The expedition ship Vanguard drifted through the emptiness, its reinforced hull humming with power as it neared the derelict station. On the bridge, Ambassador Elias Vance stood rigid, his eyes fixed on the monstrous silhouette before them. The station was far larger than the council's records had shown. Twisting corridors and jagged extensions jutted out from its surface, as if it had grown in unnatural ways over time. There were no lights, no signs of life. And yet, as the ship inched closer, the overwhelming sensation of something watching pressed down on everyone aboard. Confirmed, said Lieutenant Reyes, her voice tight as she analyzed the sensor readings. This structure is far older than we assumed. Estimated at nearly 600 years. Elias inhaled sharply. That meant the station had already been ancient when humanity vanished. Any signs of power? A soft chime, then silence. Faint energy signatures within the core, Reyes finally said. But it's wrong. The readings fluctuate in ways I can't explain. Elias exchanged a glance with his team. Beside him, Dr. Callan, the expedition's lead scientist, frowned at the data scrolling across his holographic tablet. It's as if the power is pulsing. Aorganic. Almost like it's alive. The words sent a shiver through the crew. Alive. Elias exhaled and straightened. Suit up. We're going in. The Vanguard's docking sequence was smooth, but as soon as the airlock opened, the silence of the station swallowed them whole. Their helmet lights pierced through the void, revealing long, decayed corridors. The air smelled of matter and something ancient, something that had been left to fester in forgotten time. The walls bore deep scratches, some mechanical, others not. Reyes swept her scanner along the passageway. Still no life signs. Elias took point, leading the team deeper into the station. The further they moved, the stronger the oppressive weight in the air became. Then, at the heart of the structure, they found it, a massive central chamber, domed and lined with enormous slabs of matter, each one carved with human writing. Callan gasped. This is a message. Elias stepped closer, brushing dust from the nearest slab. His breath hitched as the words became clear. To those who find this, human or otherwise, we are here. We have always been here. The word has called, and we have answered. Do not seek us unless you are prepared to understand. A cold dread settled over him. What the hell does that mean? Callan was already snapping images, his excitement warring with the unease settling into his bones. This station wasn't just abandoned. This was deliberate. They left this message for a reason. Then the lights flickered. A deep, rumbling sound reverberated through the station, and the strange energy pulsing at the core of the structure surged. Something's happening. Reyes shouted, drawing her weapon. The chamber's walls trembled, and suddenly, holographic projections ignited all around them. Ancient recordings of humans, their faces blurred by time. Their voices whispered in a language that should have been lost, yet Elias understood every word. We are not gone. We are waiting. The slabs around them shifted, revealing deep recesses in the walls. Within them, humanoid figures lay in perfect stasis. Thousands. Their bodies suspended in some form of preserved slumber, their forms slightly altered, as if touched by something beyond human evolution. Reyes staggered back. Oh my God! Callan was already scanning, his hands shaking. This isn't. This is something else. Something we've never seen before. Elias stared at the figures, his mind racing. These weren't just lost colonists. These were the missing humans. And they had chosen to remain here. A deep, echoing sound pulsed through the chamber, like a heartbeat, but vast, omnipresent. The power within the station surged again, and the holograms flickered to reveal one last message. A single figure stood in the projection, cloaked in something dark, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Its voice, undeniably human, spoke with chilling clarity. You have come seeking answers. But you are not ready to understand. Leave this place or awaken what sleeps beyond time. The station shuddered, alarms blaring as if the structure itself rejected their presence. Commandant, Reyes barked. We need to go now. Elias hesitated for only a moment before nodding. Fall back. As they sprinted for the docking bay, the lights dimmed once more. The station's systems, whatever force had briefly reanimated them, began to die once again. As the Vanguard disengaged and pulled away from the structure, the weight of what they had just discovered settled over them. Back on the bridge, Callan exhaled sharply. That message, that warning. Do you think they meant it? Elias stared at the derelict station, the countless preserved figures still inside, waiting for something beyond their understanding. I don't know, he admitted. But I think we just knocked on the door of something we were never meant to find. Silence hung over the crew. Then, far beyond the edge of the station, in the vastness of space, something stirred.